Hi, I'm Toni Momberger with Follow Our Courts. I'm at Aitken, Cohn in Riverside today interviewing Megan Demshki. I'm so grateful you came to sit with us today and talk about how interesting and inspiring you are.
Oh, thank you, Toni.
You studied in college political science and peace studies. And you specialized in United States-Russian relations and in fact worked as a college student to smooth United States-Russia relations. Were you in charge of world peace as a 20-year-old?
Well, unfortunately, I think the current state of affairs would tell you that nothing back in 2011, 2012 was very effective.
It didn't
unfortunately.
stick.
No, it didn't stick,
Okay.
Unfortunately. And what's going on over there is just absolutely atrocious. But at the time, President Obama and the current president of Russia at the time, President Medvedev, were attempting to, really bridge the relations between the two countries, move past the Cold War, and move really the relationship between the countries to new heights, to more productive heights. And I think they saw the young people as an opportunity to do that. We didn't have the same biases that maybe our parents did from growing up with the Cold War. And so they did an exchange of students. So they took 12 student body presidents from the United States, and we had the opportunity to go to Russia for a few weeks, and then they sent about a dozen students from Russia as well. And we had the opportunity just to engage with other college students in Russia, to speak with the government in Russia, and just try to find commonalities in our way of life and in our humanity. And it was a very exciting time. And then I did some research papers on it, on globalization of thought, and then had the opportunity to go to the country of Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Turkey later that year, which again, as former Soviet states and in the Southern Caucasus, was a really interesting opportunity. But unfortunately, I think that those efforts really fell to the wayside, and obviously have not yielded the kind of productivity and movement forward that we'd hoped back, like a decade plus. So,
why were you studying this?
I think at the time I was really fascinated with the concept of globalization and what it could mean for peace. So I had a great peace studies professor that said, in order to understand peace, we have to study war. So really, much of my time in my peace studies courses was studying wars, why they occurred, how they ended. And the other aspect of that major was really interpersonal peace studies. So there was kind of the more government focused and then more interpersonal. And we learned, maybe it's through that interpersonal connection that we would be able to see more peace and more productive conversations instead of things like war and the bloodshed that comes with that. So I really thought that maybe globalization was going to be the answer to that when we started to rely on each other on a more global basis. And our economies were so interconnected. Would that lead to a more peaceful, united world? I don't know if that is the case now.
2012 was such a different world, I think, than we have now. Yeah. Were you thinking that you were going to go into a different career? Like, what did you hope to become when you grew up at that time? Or were you thinking, I love peace, I'm going to become a lawyer? Like, how did you make these connections?
I had always had my eyes on going to law school, and that really is what I went into undergrad with the understanding that I was going to do. I graduated a year early because I knew I had 3 years of law school ahead of me. I'd always wanted to be a lawyer, but I think life has a way of weaving and curving and taking you all kinds of places you didn't expect. And I think with time, I really realized that on the more local level was where I could see the most change, maybe in the fastest way for individuals. And telling individual stories and representing individual people is something that really came to resonate with me and what I get to do each and every day now.
What kind of law do you practice?
I practice traumatic personal injury, wrongful death, and medical malpractice matters, all on behalf of plaintiffs.
Your family had a business, and you weren't planning to be a plaintiff's lawyer. You were planning to work in defense. What kind of business did your family have?
I grew up, my family are all citrus growers. and then in different businesses related to the citrus industry, such as packing houses and things. And so I really grew up with a very, business-friendly focus and maybe a little bit anti-plaintiff lawyers, just a real misunderstanding for the type of work that plaintiff attorneys did, I think. So going into law school, I really never imagined that I would become a trial lawyer and represent plaintiffs.
You're very accomplished, you're awarded, you're successful, right? You're getting the Street Fighter Award this May. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me what is the Street Fighter Award and why are you getting it?
So I'm receiving the Street Fighter Award through the Consumer Attorneys of the Inland Empire. And this award is really aimed at recognizing maybe not the biggest verdict or settlement in the region, but it's there to recognize a case and attorneys that really kind of went after it and kept pushing for our clients. Because as plaintiff attorneys, we really represent the little guy, and we are often up against much more sophisticated and maybe in some ways well-funded defendants than the plaintiffs. And so that's what this award is meant to recognize.
Oh, this is my favorite part. Tell me about the case.
So the case is the Rule versus the California Republican Party, which resolved just coming up on a year ago, about last May. And we represented a man named Richard Rule and his wife, Crystal. And Richard was doing what so many members of the Inland Empire do. He was commuting to Orange County and back each and every day. He was the breadwinner of the family. And on the 91 freeway one afternoon, a gentleman pulled out in front of him. Richard was riding a motorcycle, and the vehicle that pulled out in front of him cut him off and caused a collision that rendered Mr. Rule an incomplete quadriplegic. So obviously his injuries were absolutely catastrophic. The impact on his family was completely tragic. And we were looking around wondering, here's this driver. We ended up finding out that he was unlicensed. He had the minimum insurance policy for the state of California, which is a whopping $15,000.
You can get car insurance, driver's insurance without a license?
You can.
I didn't know that.
Obviously, as an incomplete quadriplegic, his medical bills were racking up by the day, as well as he was the breadwinner for the family. So the family was really devastated, both with this change from Mr. Rule's life, as well as economically. Through over 40 depositions and thousands of pages of written discovery and documents, we were able to determine that the driver of the vehicle was a campaign walker for a local assemblyman. And he was tasked with driving his vehicle all around the county of Riverside, collecting up information from voters.
Even though he didn't have a driver's license?
Even though he didn't have a driver's license. And we found that not only was that information he was collecting vital to the local campaign, it was also vital to the statewide party. And that information was daily transmitted up to the party electronically and used to help determine where campaign funding was going throughout the state. So through this case, we were able to establish that the local campaign and the state party were in a joint venture together, funneling their resources, their money, their influence to elect this local assemblyman while also building up this vital database for the statewide party. And ultimately, we were able to secure a policy limit settlement in that case for $11 million. That really transformed this family's lives. I had the pleasure of going over to the Rule's home just a few weeks ago. They were able to move to a home where Mr. Rule can navigate the whole property now in his wheelchair, from the front door through the garage. And they've really brought in all the equipment he needs to do his therapy right on site. He has a van that he can now drive, go pick the kids up from school.
He can drive?
He can drive.
Wow.
And just to have the opportunity to see the level of comfort that we were able to help provide for him. No amount of money is ever going to repair the incredible damage that was done to Mr. Rule and his family. But it's my hope that through this case, not only will political parties be held responsible to the same standards that they require of local businesses, but also that Mr. Rule, his day is going to be just a tiny bit easier each and every day. That's really my goal.
When you go for an award for him, are you factoring in as a non attorney person. I don't understand how you come up with the number, because I'm assuming he needed the house, right? He needs a new architecture. He needed the van, but he also probably can't work. I mean, he can't commute. Whatever he was doing in Orange County, whatever his field was, he clearly needed to be on site to do it. So
correct. He was a union pavement striper, and that was really his lifelong career. He'd worked his way up through the union, and he had a really good job that provided for his family, but was very physical. And it's it was the opinion of our experts and our those that work in in job placement each and every day, that while he may be able to work a few hours here and there, he's never going to be employable on a full-time basis, even with additional education.
it was your first year as an attorney. You were a new lawyer, and you identified how you could win it, and you went after it, and you held on to it.
It developed over several years, but yeah, I had the opportunity. I was sworn into the bar in December, and the following August, these clients signed up with me and with Aitken Cohn. And it was really a brain trust of the whole firm. But one day I came to the office after thinking over the case all night, and I thought, okay, we're following the money, and we're watching hundreds of thousands of dollars be funneled from the statewide party down to this local campaign. And I kept thinking, are political parties insured? Are they responsible? And we started digging, and we really were unable to identify any case law that supported our theory. But my mentor Wiley has always told me, for every wrong there is a remedy. And in this case, that would just ring in my brain when I would drive home or at night. I think, this man was so wronged. And the fact that the local assembly nor the state party ever bothered to take the simple step to even see if this driver was licensed just did not sit right with me. And it did not feel like justice that you could have the political parties and electeds who make the many of the rules that govern businesses and insurance and good business practices, that they didn't even have to follow those very minimum requirements. We lost motions and we won some motions, and we just kept plugging away until really on the eve of trial, we were able to resolve this matter.
So speaking of establishing law, tell me about Sumrall versus, is it Modern Alloys?
So that was a matter, one of kind of a friend in our plaintiff's bar world came to us one day, a few weeks out from filing his motion for summary judgment opposition on a very challenging case. This involved a gentleman, Michael Sumrall, who also happened to be on a motorcycle on his way home from work one evening, who was struck by an employee of a company called Modern Alloys. And Modern Alloys had a very unique business model where all of the employees would come to a central yard, and then from that central yard, they would be sent to various job sites really throughout the region. And they were cement pavers, but they were not paid until they were out on the job site. So these gentlemen would come, leave as early as 2 hours before they would ultimately be paid.
Oh, wow.
And so what Modern Alloys said, and what the trial judge agreed with, was that the gentleman, as he pulled in and struck Mr. Sumrall, he said he was not in the course and scope of employment at the time that this occurred. He said that he was making a normal commute, and normal commutes are not considered within the course and scope of employment. But we felt that this was inherently wrong. The business was receiving an incredible benefit from all of these employees coming to this central location, getting together, they'd load up supplies, they'd have safety meetings, then they'd go out to where they were ultimately paid.
We were having safety meetings off the clock.
Yeah. We always said there was a great wage and hour case, but that wasn't our case. So what we brought to the Court of Appeal was we believed that they were on a business errand at the time that they would come to this yard and then go out to the job site, because the employer was receiving such an incredible benefit of all of this time. And the individuals, they couldn't drive their vehicles to these locations because it was out on the freeway. It'd be unsafe to send 20 guys or however many out to the freeway. So what we raised with the Court of Appeal was that at the time of the accident, the driver of the vehicle was on a business errand. And the law in this area was a bit unclear. but we went to the Court of Appeal. I think it took over 2 years.
Wow.
And we raised this issue, and ultimately they determined that it was in fact a business errand and that our case could proceed to the trial court and we could have our jury trial. The case ultimately resolved, again, kind of right before the trial in that one as well. And now Mr. Summerall's living, he was able to move to Florida where he lives with his wife, much closer to their children, again, in a home that really has been adapted to meet his very significant needs.
Do you ever ride a motorcycle?
I do not personally ride a motorcycle. But I do believe that people who are operating motorcycles in a safe manner, wearing safety gear, should be able to do so, and that drivers have, a real duty and a responsibility to take care, to look for motorcyclists, bicyclists, pedestrians. Just because we're in vehicles that have more protection doesn't mean, we can drive without concern for the safety of others.
I need to know to protect myself from accidentally ending up in one of these defendant seats?
I think there's too much distracted driving now with our cell phones.
Yeah.
And with all of these, nice computers in many new vehicles, I think that distracted driving is a huge problem. And it's April. It's actually Distracted Driver Awareness Month.
Is it really?
It is. And I really think that, text messages, whatever's going on your cell phone can wait. I think that a huge increase that we've seen is related to distracted driving, and many of us don't have a respect for, the danger and the risk we have every time, we get behind the wheel.
You are a hometown girl. So is this just where you're launching from, or?
No, we've definitely put our roots down here. I was actually born down the street at Community Hospital, and to have the opportunity to come back now to manage our Riverside office and to serve this community and the Inland Empire is really where my heart is. The streets that I grew up on, the streets I learned to drive on, making those streets safer, making our community safer has just been so meaningful to me. I think the Inland Empire kind of gets a bum rap sometimes, and there's so much this community has to offer. I think that we're moving to new and exciting places, and I just am thrilled that I get to be part of that.
That's wonderful. It's an honor to meet you and to interview you in honor of Distracted Driving Month. Pretend I meant to do that. Thank you for sitting with us today.
Thank you for having me.